Hi, my name is Michael Foley. I'm a certified financial planner and student loan professional, and wanted to spend some time today talking about the student loan repayment options. Sometimes we get overwhelmed with all these things we read online, and there's so many varying opinions, and there's people telling you just to pay off your loans as fast as possible. There's people telling you to don't take advantage of the forgiveness programs, and then there's this new save plan that you could save all this interest. So, I want to spend some time really delineating what are your paths for getting these loans off of your books. Okay. If you take all of these options, they can be delineated into one of three paths. Okay. So the first path is you just pay them off, right? Not a lot of rocket science. However, there are some different strategies that we'll talk about. Okay. So we're just going to either pay it off, we're going to go for a long-term taxable forgiveness. So this is where you pay based off of your income on one of the income-driven repayment plans for a period of 20 or 25 years. And then if you still have a loan balance at the end of it, they allow you to throw in the towel and they forgive whatever is remaining at the end for you. However, they're going to add whatever the forgiven amount is, they're going to add that to your taxable income in that final year of distribution, right? So if we are waiting all the way to 20, 25 years, that could be a considerable tax bill that we have in the future. So we might want to be saving and investing along the way, okay? And then the third option is we go for some sort of tax-free forgiveness program, like the public service loan forgiveness program, or oftentimes other places like the VA offers another one called the EDRP plan, which is another tax-free forgiveness plan. Okay, so we're either going to pay it off, we're going to go the long route, or we're going to go for a tax-free program that are often more along the lines of 5 to 10 years. Okay, so let's talk about the first one. Let's break that down. So if we're just going to pay these things off, we really encourage you to work with your advisor and someone who's helping you with the overall plan so that we can see how aggressively are we able to pay these things off, and is that even feasible for us to, from a budgeting standpoint, to make those payments to aggressively pay those off. And then we got to look at and say, okay, are there any ways that we can reduce our interest that we have on these loans and lessen the headwind of interest that we have coming onto these loans? Okay, so one of the strategies that we do see on the federal side is through the SAVE plan. So the SAVE plan does allow for some interest subsidies on any unpaid interest. So any interest that we're accruing on our loans above the threshold of whatever our payment is based off of our income and our household size, they subsidize. So if we have, let's say 300,000 of loans, we're accruing, maybe $1,700 a month in interest on that. Well, if we can report based off of our income from, last year, report an income, or maybe we have, several folks in our family, and we can get a payment around like $500. Well, by you just being enrolled in that SAVE plan, that's effectively reducing your interest to just $500 a month. So if we look at that and actually get your effective interest rate, $500 a month on 300,000 of loans is a 2% effective interest rate. So obviously that's not a long-term solution here, but might be able to buy us a year or so of a artificially lower interest that we can use that to really accelerate our repayment. Okay. Outside of the other option is we can look to refinance to a private bank, but we just want to make sure that before you refinance these loans to a private entity, you know what you're missing out on the federal side, because once you jump ship, there is no going back. You can't say, oh wait, no, I want to use these federal programs now. There is no going back. And so we call the federal systems a very kind of cushy setup, and there's a lot of different, oh, well, if this happens, well, we have this program, or if you default on these loans, well, there's ways of getting out of it, right? The private side, not so forgiving. And so we really want to be very cognizant that there is no other better option out there in the federal domain before refinancing outright. Okay. And I would also look at, where interest rates are at the time. Right now, interest rates are not that favorable, and it's pretty comparable to what we're getting with the federal government. And by having some of the other protections, especially if you have family, the loans are discharged without taxation with the federal government, as opposed to them being potentially passed on to your spouse or kids when you have a private loan. So I want to be very cautious around that. Okay. Now, let's talk about the long term. So if we're going to go, so we talked about the pay it off strategy. Now let's talk about the long route. So typically where we see this route coming in is, if you're, as a general rule, if your income is less than the total amount of loans that you have outstanding, this option might be a good play for you. And so we really got to look at this as an option. Um, what we like to do is we like to run the numbers to say, okay, well, what if you make those payments based off of your income and your household size on one of the three different plans? So we have the save plan, we have the pay as you earn, and we have the income based repayment. So let's say we run all three of those options, and let's say we add up all of our monthly payments for 20 or 25 years on those, okay? And if we get to the end of the 20 years, like we talked about, there's going to be this big, tax bill that we're going to have to pay. And we typically assume about 40% tax rate on that. And so if we add up this tax bill plus all of the monthly payments for that whole 20, 25 years, that's considered what we call your total cost of the loan. So that total cost of the loan is what we're going to want to compare to if we were just to pay it off aggressively, okay? And oftentimes what we find is that if there's a big discrepancy between your annual income and your loan balance, oftentimes that middle option is actually more favorable than paying it off aggressively, sometimes to the tune of tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars different. So, you have to really take everything that you know about debt repayment almost out of your brain to understand how this plan works, because at the end of the day, they're forgiving loans, which is not a normal thing, right? And so we have to tread lightly with this, though, to make sure that we are playing by the rules and we know what to expect. And then we really like to make sure that our clients have a backup plan. And so we can use some different hedges and putting money into other investment accounts to make sure that we not only have enough for this tax bill, but potentially if there are changes in the programs, we can be prepared for that as well. Okay. Now, let's talk about this last option. So what are some of these tax-free options? So the tax-free options are all contingent on where you work. So it's not a repayment plan in and of itself, right? These are simply like the public service loan forgiveness program or working for the VA. They're all contingent on where you work, but there are different programs that they'll allow for forgiveness if you hit certain criteria. It's not necessarily you enrolling in the public service loan forgiveness repayment plan, right? That's not it. To qualify for the public service loan forgiveness program, you have to be on one of the income-driven repayment plans. So just like in the second category there, so you have to be on the save plan, you got to be on income-based or pay as you earn. There are a couple other ones that qualify, but those are the three that are most common. And so if you are enrolled in one of those while you're working at a qualified institution, which is some sort of nonprofit, 501c3, government, university, if you can look online using the PSLF help tool on the studentaid.gov website to verify if your employer is eligible. And if we're making payments while working at least 30 hours or more for that institution, then we could get credit for the public service loan forgiveness plan. And the cool thing about this is that instead of, in category 2, you had to go 20 or 25 years and it was taxable at the end. Well, in the public service loan forgiveness program, it's only 10 years. It doesn't have to be consecutive. It's just 120 months of having the right type of payment and the working at the right institution. And if you go 10 years, they'll forgive the total balance and no federal taxes are due on that, okay? There are some certain states that there might be a state tax on that forgiveness. So make sure you're speaking with your accountant to determine if you fall into one of those states. But this is one of the most efficient paths to look at if you're working at one of those qualified employers. But again, we always want people moving in the student loan space and understanding the game that it is, right? This is if we look at this instead of our sure thing, our path, and we build some hedges and move forward with some cautious optimism if we're eligible for these programs, then you can't go wrong. But even if we're pursuing the public service loan forgiveness program, we want to make sure that we're not just taking advantage of having a lower payment all the way throughout and putting all of our eggs in that basket, right? Because at the end of the day, the government could change this, right? At any point, we could get a new administration and they say, away with the public service loan forgiveness program. This is Congress run, right? So this is something that we don't want to put all of our eggs in that basket. However, if it is an option for us, then let's pursue it, right? And if it's going to be our most efficient path, then that's fantastic. So we want to look at that, but we got to tread lightly because there is that potential that there could be changes. Now, do I think that there's going to be changes in the program? Not necessarily, right? I think that it would be more of a political suicide for something like that. However, that's not the question. The question is, can it change? And the answer to that is yes. And so we got to prepare appropriately, okay? The other thing that we see in this public service loan forgiveness plan is a lot of people making big career decisions around it. And we always encourage people, never make a decision to further your career solely based off of a government-run student loan program. Add it to your list of pros and cons. This is a great program that we can take advantage of, but it should not be the only reason you're working at your institution, okay? Because we don't want you to get all the way to the end and then find out that, hey, they changed the rules on us at the end, and then you don't get forgiveness, and then you just wasted that much time potentially furthering your career. The other thing that we see a lot of is a lot of people wanting to make less to get more forgiveness. And so sometimes we got to pull our head out of the forgiveness track to understand that sometimes at some point there's a break even, right? And so maybe if you're looking at job options and one job qualifies for the public service loan forgiveness program and another one doesn't, but the one that doesn't maybe makes $150,000 more per year, well, maybe you have to go another 5 or 6 years to get eligibility for the PSLF program. Well, if you're looking at it from a math standpoint here, that job, although you're not getting the public service loan forgiveness, and let's say you have $300,000 in loans outstanding, well, your break even is 2 years. Just make more money and just pay it off, right? And so we got to pull our head out of some of the forgiveness because we get really excited. We can make the numbers run really good, the less money we show on paper, but we got to make sure that we're looking at the whole plan here. And so it's really important that whichever path we're going on this, that we're integrating this student loan plan into your overall financial plan. This is not just a silo. This is oftentimes the biggest part of our clients' financial situations. And so we want to make sure that this is a component that is fully integrated into your overall financial plan, because there are other components that we need to be planning for. We might need, some protections in place from an insurance standpoint to make sure that if something were to happen, we can continue paying for these loans. Maybe we need some investments in the background to make sure that we have some hedges in place in case the government changes these, right? So encourage you to make sure that you're working with your planner to really identify what are your overall financial goals, and then how can we integrate the student loan plan into that with you. So hope this is helpful to kind of simplify these different three paths for repayment. And we're so grateful that you're here today and learning with us, and we will hope to see you in a future session. Thanks so much.